But even Republicans who agree with him are likely to demand that any bill extending legal status also impose new border security measures, say funding for a new wall. And that's something that Democrats have insisted they won't support. And so you can see, Elaine, how the biggest threat to these so-called dreamers could be congressional gridlock.
Well, so Nancy, as you mentioned, the reason we're in this situation in the first place is because Congress has been unable to agree in the past on this issue. What could make this time different, if anything?
Well, one factor is that they've now got this 6-month deadline, and every member of Congress knows that in 6 months, if 800,000 young people who consider the United States the only home they have ever known have to go back to home countries that in many cases they have never been to, that is going to be something that weighs on Congress. Now, that is still not going to be enough to convince a lot of conservatives in particular, nor will the fact that when you poll on this issue, a significant majority of Americans do believe that there should be some kind of solution for these so-called dreamers. The problem is that you have a lot of Republicans from conservative districts who are getting exactly the opposite message from their constituents, who are saying, look, these people jumped the line, they came here with their children hoping for exactly this outcome, that Congress or the U.S. government writ large would somehow allow their children to become citizens, or at the very least to get legal status. And they say it sends exactly the wrong message to would-be immigrants. And then beyond that, Elaine, you could also have a problem where since 6 months really goes by like this on Capitol Hill, you may have members of Congress from both sides with great intentions who are working furiously on this issue who simply run out of time. This is one of those, you saw Republicans spend 7 months on health care reform, and they still had nothing to show for it at the end of the day. They came up with a lot of different plans, but in the end they couldn't find consensus. Now you've got Democrats and Republicans trying to find consensus, and they're a little out of practice when it comes to compromising on Capitol Hill.
Well, Nancy, as we get closer to midterm elections here, when you look at 6 months from now, that's right on the edge. How could that factor into the dynamic?
Well, you've got Republicans who are really desperate to show their constituents that they have been able to do something with this unprecedented opportunity they've been handed, which is control of both houses of Congress and the White House. Obviously, it didn't work out with health care reform, and they were hoping that they would be able to focus all this fall on tax reform, another issue near and dear to many Republicans. Now it turns out they're also going to have to add immigration reform to the mix. Now, if you look at these two issues alone, immigration reform, tax reform, these are two issues that Republicans in particular have said for years, if not decades, that they really wanted to tackle. They've been unable to do it because they are such thorny issues, similar to health care. And so the notion that they're going to be able to come up with a comprehensive tax reform package that they can move through the House and the Senate, and that simultaneously they can do something big on immigration reform, that is an incredibly tall order, and one could end up fighting the other.
All right, Nancy Cortez on Capitol Hill for us. Nancy, thank you.
You're welcome.